Welcome to another episode of Arbitration Life. I'm Janette, Brin.
And I'm Hana, Doumal.
So Hana, the GAR headlines the other day.
Yeah.
EU begins legal action against UK over Brexit. So basically, the European Commission has launched infringement proceedings against the UK over its plan to delay the implementation of Brexit legislation on trade in Northern Ireland. So if the UK fails to enter into discussions, the EU is saying it may invoke a mechanism under the Brexit withdrawal agreement to bring the case before the Permanent Court of Arbitration.
That is indeed a big deal, Janette, and it will be interesting to see how that pans out and what the member states have to say. We are also interested in what you members of the arbitration community have to say. Please drop some comments below, and we certainly would love to hear your thoughts.
Meanwhile, let's get today's show started. Today's guest is a queen, no doubt, with over 20 years of experience in the legal field. She specializes in commercial litigation, insolvency, plus international and domestic arbitration, admitted to practice in 4 Caribbean countries, including the BVI and Jamaica. She is a highly respected lawyer throughout the region. So much so, she was invited to act as a High Court judge of the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court in 2009. Joining us from her home country of Jamaica, where she's currently a partner at Livingston Alexander Levy. Please welcome Tana'ania Small Davis.
Welcome to the show, Tana'ania. Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
It's so nice to see you both.
So good to see you. How are you?
I am very well, thank you. How are you guys doing?
Great. You know, when I first heard of Tana'ania Small Davis, I was working at CCT as the marketing manager at the time, and you were representing them in a telecommunications related dispute.
Yes.
I was at the courthouse when I saw you arrive, girl. I remember thinking, she is fierce. She is so gonna win this case. So I have to ask you, if you could have been a superhero, what power would you have and why?
You know, that's actually a very easy question to answer because it is one that I got almost on a daily basis from my son, Nicholas, who would always ask, if you could have a superpower, what would it be? I remember those conversations so well. And my superpower would be teleportation. That is because I am always overscheduled or cutting things too close and always wishing, oh my gosh, I have 5 minutes. I wish I could just transport myself there. Sometimes also driving home and you're tired and you're just wishing I didn't have to do this drive. I just wish I could just blink my eyes and just be where I need to be. So teleportation it is. That would be my superpower if I had one.
Good one.
That's a great one, actually. Now I'm going to ask you, what have you learned about yourself since you became a lawyer?
Well, I think I would have to say what I learned about myself since becoming a lawyer is the key of preparation. As a student, I was not the most diligent student. I was not faithfully attending classes when I should be. I was on the Barbados campus of UE, and the beach was just right there. And so quite often that's where I would spend my time. And once I got through, had my degree and, you know, did law school and all of that and got out into the real world, it became very important to me to be prepared at all times. I don't like to be caught flat-footed. I don't like to be in a situation where something comes up and I'm not ready. I don't have an answer or I just don't feel equipped. So I've learned that preparation is absolutely the #1 thing to guarantee success for me. That is.
Okay.
So Tana'ania, you're actually a graduate of the University of West Indies, as you highlighted, and the Norman Manley Law School in Jamaica.
Yes.
Who would you say was your favorite professor, and what would you say is your most memorable lesson from school?
My favorite, hands down, was Dennis Morrison, QC. At law school. He taught evidence, but everything about him, he is the quintessential gentleman. He's a quintessential lawyer. Then when he was a judge and as an arbitrator himself, he was just someone who at all times you felt completely free to speak freely to him and not feel silly or stupid or anything. Even as a lawyer appeared before him, as I subsequently had the pleasure of doing, even if you felt like, you know, your submissions were not at the best, he would never in any way make you feel in any way embarrassed. He's just a quintessential human being, in my opinion. And my memory from law school starts with him, in that I had an occasion in which I had a falling out with a teacher, one of the lecturers, the professors there. And she expressing disappointment in my level of attendance in class, something that I just mentioned. Yeah. And when she wrote the letter to me, I immediately fired off a letter. You know, that sort of just right away, just triggered and just wrote a letter. But at least I had the presence of mind to say, let me run this past someone, because, you know, it is a teacher. I should show respect and all of that. And I decided to go to Mr. Morrison to say, you know, this has happened. Look at this letter. This is how I feel, and so on. And he said something to me that I have had occasion to fall back on almost, with such regularity. And it is a lifelong lesson which I learned from him at law school before I came into the profession. And that was, sometimes you should take a step back, calm yourself down, reread or reconsider what you're about to say or write. And then you temper yourself in that way, because then if you speak too quickly, you might have said something that you regret. And that has been a very, very valuable lesson to me. And it was a great memory as well, because, you know, the fact that he took the time to tell me this at that young stage, and, you know, and that he was even open. I felt completely open to be able to go to him with this problem. That taught me a lot. And it also taught me about my own role, even now, particularly now as I get older, in also mentoring others. And the lessons that we learn about not just having that trigger finger for sending a message, a text, an email, or a trigger tongue in saying something, because then, you know, the spoken word is like a spent arrow, as my grandmother always told me. That's my most important memory from that time, and I revisit it almost weekly.
That's great. I think that's a great lesson learned and a great advice, not only to lawyers, but to really everyone. Now, I wanted to ask you, in addition to commercial litigation and insolvency, you specialize in international and domestic arbitration. So what would you say are some of the key differences that you have been seeing lately in international versus domestic arbitration?
Well, you know, the main difference between the two is usually this element of differentness, foreignness. There's something foreign about it. It's usually multinationals and international arbitration. And so you have that element of it. Sometimes we have situations where the subject matter, the contract and so on, is determined by particular law of that country under which the contract is governed by. And that can bring an element of, of strangeness, may I put it that way, which is the biggest difference between domestic arbitration. But I've found that gap is closing now, because even in domestic arbitration, you will find that there are entities who are, although maybe domiciled, for example, in Jamaica, their contracts are governed by some other law, depending on the nature of the transaction, the goods or the service, the goods particularly. And I think that is where I would say that I'm seeing a lessening of the initial difference that I found in straddling the both spheres.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Awesome. So in 2009, Tana'ania, you were actually invited to act as a High Court judge of the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court. That's pretty big.
Yes, it was.
What was that experience like for you?
Well, first of all, I remember when I got the call from the Chief Justice inviting me, I was in such disbelief. It was completely unexpected. And then I felt thrilled to be asked to do this and what the experience might entail. And then that was followed by anxiety as to whether or not I would be able to do the job. I did spend 6 months doing it, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I did not expect to enjoy it as much as I did. And I took it very seriously because, you know, I always wanted to be performing at my best as best as I could. And one of the, again, the preparation element was important to me. And I just sort of channeled what I would like the judges that I admired and how they went about dealing with matters, finding the difference between how you manage your courtroom, how you manage your lawyers vis-a-vis one to the other, being advocates and adversaries, and also a desire to be a place where the litigants themselves, being in a strange environment, would feel comfortable nevertheless, although it was all strange to them. My grandfather was a judge, and so I'd heard many stories about him and his time in the courtroom. And he ran a very tight, a very strict courtroom, and both lawyers and litigants were in fear of him. Those are the stories that I grew up hearing. And so I actually went the other way and just wanted to be in a place, you know, run a courtroom that was efficient, that the judge, the lawyers would be confident that I had read and prepared. And so whatever submissions they were making, it was to an open court that already had an understanding. And also that the litigants would feel, well, although this is a judge, it was someone who understood and would be willing to hear me out, listen and hear me out. And I really enjoyed it. And the greatest anxiety I had was doing the criminal assizes. Just being, you know, uncertain, because that is not my primary area of concern, of practice. But nevertheless, as I often tell people, I would just every night be reading Archibald's criminal pleadings from cover to cover so that I was prepared. And thankfully, I did not have any unforgivable faux pas or any great missteps. So I'm grateful. It was a wonderful experience. I really enjoyed it.
Wonderful. It's great. And I want to follow up on this and ask you if you would like to renew this experience or if you would like to become a full-time arbitrator, for example.
I definitely would. I would consider a judicial position, you know, in a few years from now, as well as my current intention is actually to transition full-time to arbitration. I would say in the next 10 years, full-time, within the next 10 years, I think I'd like to do full-time arbitration. And there's a similarity between the two, as you can imagine. And, you know, I like the commercial aspect of transactions and disputes. And so the arbitration role really is a wonderful one, and one that's part of my post-litigation plan.
That's great to hear.
So do you think it's important for Caribbean lawyers to get more familiar with arbitration and perhaps introduce it to their practice?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that, let me give you an example. In Jamaica here, where I'm based primarily, we are getting court dates for trials in the year 2026, 2027.
Oh, wow.
And the fact of the matter is that arbitration is an absolutely sophisticated and efficient means of resolving your dispute in a much shorter period of time. And where you have particularly commercial transactions, investment, banking, those sorts of things, construction, time is of the essence to business people like that, and they certainly cannot afford to be waiting a long time for a court process. And I think that practitioners, lawyers, should definitely involve arbitration as part of their practice, both as counsel and perhaps themselves as arbitrators. It really has enhanced my own level of skill in having to sit on the other side of the table and to listen to submissions and to read documents and to make decisions has been a great, given a great impact on my skill set.
That's great. And we know that you're currently a partner at Livingston Alexander Levy, which is actually the oldest law firm in Jamaica. It was established in 1911.
Yes. Yes, yeah. I am. Livingston Alexander Levy celebrating 110 years this year. And I joined in 2012. I left BVI, my other home, and came back to Jamaica and joined Livingston Alexander Levy. And I have enjoyed it tremendously. It's a bigger setting than what I had been accustomed to by way of the size of a law firm when I was in BVI. And one of the, I feel almost a sort of luxury that I have is the number of associates that are assigned to me that help me to get my work done more efficiently. That has been a great plus. And of course, the whole system they have here of senior lawyers, Queen's Counsel, practitioners of every different level, all of that comes together to really help all of us, each of us in our different practice areas to be better, you know, and I appreciate that.
That's wonderful. And can you give us maybe a snapshot of your current practice at the moment?
I still do primarily litigation in Jamaica and in the Eastern Caribbean still. I don't do that much insolvency work here as I did in BVI. We have a new Insolvency Act, and people are taking time to get their feet settled on it. And it is it's a different kind of processing of insolvency than we had in BVI, which, you know, I think BVI is stellar when it comes on to that area of practice. So I do a lot of commercial litigation. That's the bulk of my practice. And I do my arbitration at the same time as well. A much more varied practice than I had in BVI. I do miss you all in BVI. Wish I was there more often than I have been in recent years. But luckily, I still am able to come there and other parts of the Eastern Caribbean.
Please do, please do.
So what advice would you share with younger lawyers working to build their legal careers in the Caribbean?
I think that I should say I'm also on the disciplinary committee in Jamaica. And that has helped me to see the areas in which lawyers can sometimes fall into error. And so the number one piece of advice I would give young lawyers is that they should find a mentor, find a good mentor, and that they should not be afraid of reaching out to someone else for guidance, for advice, because many times it's just a simple matter of, had you consulted with somebody to bounce this situation that you're experiencing with a matter or with a client, you would certainly have avoided some of the problems that they find themselves in. Or in the case just of development of your skill set, you know, another lawyer is able to tell you, try this method. Have you done this? Have you investigated or researched this aspect? I think that as a profession, it's a collegiate profession, and we should therefore lean more on others in our profession who have experience more than we may have, or in a different area than which we're accustomed. And so that is an important thing, is to find someone that you can have as your mentor. I think that's the most important advice for a young lawyer right now.
Thank you, Tana'ania. I think that's, again, a great advice. Would you say that more Caribbean corporations are choosing arbitration?
They definitely are choosing arbitration more frequently than ever before. And I think that that's a good thing. And the more that we have these cases coming up of, our matters going to arbitration, and they see the efficiency with which arbitration process works, then that is its own advertisement, and we'll see more of it, because it's really is a more efficient way to resolve disputes.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, Tana'ania, there's the issue of diversity. It's often talked about, as you know. In your opinion, what does the industry need to do more of to tackle the issue of diversity?
Well, yeah, diversity is something that is very much a hot topic in all different spheres of life right now. And from the point of view of arbitration, I think that, you have situations, particularly in international arbitration, where there might be differences between the parties as far as cultural issues are concerned. The obvious ones are gender, then there are race issues and so on, all of that. It seems to me from my experience that we don't have such a difficulty or disparity as far as gender or even race is concerned as some other spheres of life may have. And I think that what would definitely help in closing the gap even further, such as exists, whether it is geographical diversity, cultural diversity, ethnic diversity, or even professional diversity in the makeup of the arbitrators on a panel, is to publish statistics. And that's I've found in other areas to be a very useful way in promoting the fact that there is diversity, and giving the users of our arbitration centers more confidence that there is available persons with whom they believe can relate to the issues that are important to them in their dispute. And if we do publish statistics, it also helps us to hold our own selves accountable, so that whilst we show that we have diversity in all these various areas, and that panels so constituted in a diverse way have performed at such a high level of service, that in and of itself is something that will encourage greater access and use of arbitration by more and more persons and more corporations.
Yes, thank you. And to follow up on that, and again, because we're keeping it real on Arbitration Life, we wanted to ask you if unfortunately there has ever been a time in your career where you felt discriminated against due to your ethnicity or gender, and if so, how you handled it?
I have had experience of gender discrimination, and I have had experience of, I'm not sure what you would call this one, but it was really because I think from the point of view of my having been trained in the Caribbean and not in the UK, for example, and particularly in our profession, which I think for us, a lot of our common law comes from the UK, and we have this great reverence for the UK institute as an institution for the court system. So I did feel and experience a lot of discrimination just based on the fact that I did not go to school in the UK. It was Caribbean trained, and so therefore may be considered to be not as good a lawyer as perhaps someone who had gone to Oxford or Cambridge or any of the UK universities. And my answer to that, Hana, has been always to just work harder and to prove them wrong, to prove them that I am just as good and that I am somebody who is just as, can deliver the service to them in just the same way. That's the only solution to it, is to work harder. I did not allow myself to get bogged down in that or to carry it around as a chip on my shoulder. The solution is just simply to outwork any other person who is in the case with me on the other side, even if they were on the same side, to work so hard that they would always want me on their side. And that's the only solution I can think of. That's the solution that I would give to my children. Just work harder than the person next to you.
Thank you, Tana'ania, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to relate to this. So thank you.
Definitely.
Yes.
So as it turns out, in case you didn't know, Tana'ania, you are actually a superhero. You're a lawyer, you're married to a lawyer, you're a mom of two?
Three.
Yes,
Three.
Superpowers. How do you do it?
Wow, it's very difficult. I have to admit, it's very difficult. And for a long time, you struggle with this idea of trying to find balance. Everybody talks about trying to find balance and having, the best of all your worlds, all the globes that you have that are spinning on your fingertips. I think that I definitely did put a lot of my energies into development of my professional career, because you know you really feel like that is where you have to spend the time in the early days to try and make your name. But my role as a mother is very important to me, and I think that that is probably will be my greatest legacy, is what kind of children did I raise? What kind of human beings are they? Are they kind? Are they thoughtful? You know, that kind of thing. And it's been very difficult, but what I think I found peace when I read somewhere some years ago that we will not find the absolute correct balance all the time. Something is going to take priority at one point, and then you just keep shifting, but just making sure that you're always aware of the other roles you have, the other things that are important that you have to give time to. And that is how I've reconciled with myself, the fact that I'm not this marvelous person able to juggle a huge case while going to all my children's plays and football games and sports day, and also being the support for my husband, being that woman behind my husband, pushing the wind beneath his wings and all of that. So it's just that there's going to be always a balancing act that's changing, perhaps even daily. Today is different from tomorrow, but just always trying to be present and being the best that I can at the time.
Thank you, Tana'ania, for keeping it real again.
Yes.
On the life balance. And I think this is a very interesting reflection and thoughts you having on this balance that is constantly changing, and it's not unique, and it's not going to be the same all the time. So thank you for that. Now, talking about cases, when you win a case, how do you celebrate? And if you lose a case, how do you recover?
Okay, well, let me start with the more unpleasant side of if you lose a case. If I lose a case, the thing about me, which I'm sure Janette can attest to, is that I'm all in. When I'm doing my cases, I'm all in. And therefore, if I lose, I am completely deflated because I have put out the best, all that I have. I leave it all on the floor. And it takes me a while to recover from that. It really does. And I think what I do is then I will have maybe 2 or 3 days where I just do no work. I just kind of just don't take up a book. I just try not to do any work, to just let that just pass through my system. But then I pull myself together in no time, probably not as quickly as I ought to. I pull myself together and just realize, okay, on to the next thing, and make sure that if there was a mistake on my part in any way, that I don't repeat it. I try to learn from it. And the question I ask myself every time I have a disappointment of any kind is, what am I to learn from this experience? And so if I lose a case, that's what I ask myself. What should I learn from this going forward? That's how I pull myself together to say, okay, well, let me tackle the next thing. When I win a case, in the past, what I have done is that I treat myself to a mini vacation, a trip or something. That's what I do when I've won a case. And I remember one particular one in BVI that, having done that case, which lasted, I think it lasted a month, my treat to myself was to go to Anegada for 5 days. I'd never been to Anegada, and that was my big treat to myself. And I always remember it. It was fantastic. It was great. But I will say that my latest treat to myself when I win a case now is to buy a piece of jewelry. Not because I want it for myself. It's an investment piece for my daughter. I happen to wear it now, but it's really for her.
That's a great way to see it. I like that.
I love it.
Yeah, I really hope we all get to win more cases, really.
Yes. Tana'ania, now, of course, if you, well, not really, of course, but, you know, I'm so in awe right now. If you were not a lawyer, what would you be?
I know growing up, I had thought that if I wasn't a lawyer, I would want to be a surgeon. but I definitely don't have the idea now. Do you know what I would like to be if I was not a lawyer? I would like to be like a criminal profiler. Those people who study people and they can piece it together and tell you the characteristics of who committed this crime. I remember that TV show years ago called Profiler. I was absolutely fascinated with it. So I'd either be a profiler, or I would be own a coffee shop, because that's my fantasy as well. To have a coffee shop with a little reading nook, and you would be ordering these lovely books, and people would come in and have coffee and drink, and it would be just such a nice setting. So I don't know which one to choose, but one of those two.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I love it. So you have to get our bonus question. Now, I kind of get a glimpse of an idea what you might choose. So what team are you on? Would it be How to Get Away with Murder or Boston Legal?
How to Get Away with Murder. How to Get Away with Murder. Yes.
Yes. That would fit in with, yeah.
I mean, yeah, I'm a professor and a criminal lawyer, so that was an easy.
Yes.
Do you have another show that you like? Another lawyer-related show?
I do, you know, again, this goes back to being the profiler thing. Another show that I love to watch is The Blacklist. It's not a lawyer show, it's not a legal show, but I love The Blacklist. And I will binge watch that whenever I can, just episode after episode. I love that. As far as another law show is concerned, I can't remember now. I don't spend a lot of time watching any of them currently. But another classic is Paper Chase, which people always quote. And I don't even know if it's available anywhere right now. But it's that's another good one. And I used to love to watch LA Law because they were the women were just so stylish and classy.
Well, how about Suits then? Everyone is stylish and classy.
Yes, that's it. Suits. Suits is a great one. Suits is a great one. Yeah. Although I always think that unfortunately we can't dress as fashionably as they do.
Oh, no. I was watching an episode of Suits last night because I've been on repeat, and I saw a split up to the hip.
Yes!
I was like, I'm not sure how people would react if I walked in the office. Or walked into court, no less, in that outfit. It looked good.
You're right.
So, Tana'ania, it's been indeed a pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you for being such a great example to women in the field. It's been an honor to get to talk to you today and get to know more about your beautiful career and life.
Thank you both so much. You look so wonderful, and I hope the next time we can have one of these, I can be actually at the table with you.
Yes,
please.
Yes. And we'll have some coffee or tea.
Exactly.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much, Tana'ania. I really look forward to meeting you in person.
Thank you. You too.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
So that was indeed an awesome interview with Tana'ania. Gosh, she gives me life. You know, as a woman in business, it's always good to speak to women like that who can just be a constant reminder that you're not in this alone as a woman in career, trying to build your career. You know, we just need to be reminded sometimes. So I felt that in Rio. Thank you, Tana'ania.
Absolutely. I felt that girl power. I think she's a real superhero. And I can't wait for her to actually teleport to the BVI to come meet us.
Yeah. We're waiting on you.
Well, thank you again for watching a new episode of Arbitration Life.
Be sure to follow us on all our social media channels at Arbitration Life.
Bye.
Arbitration Life is sponsored by the British Virgin Islands International Arbitration Centre, meeting the rapidly evolving dispute resolution needs of arbitration users worldwide. The BVI IAC is a neutral, impartial, efficient, and reliable dispute resolution institution and conference center located in the Caribbean, Latin America, and at the crossroads of the Americas. For more information, visit bviiac.org.